To look at a standard shipping container is to look at a very boring metal box. Yet, this simple steel rectangle built the modern global economy. Until the mid-20th century, global trade ran on a system called break bulk cargo. If a ship sailed from New York to London, its hold was packed with thousands of individual items: sacks of coffee beans, wooden crates of machinery, loose barrels of oil, and bags of flour, all jumbled together in varying sizes. Moving all this relied entirely on human muscle. Gangs of longshoremen spent weeks maneuvering heavy, awkward loads into the cramped hulls of ships, playing a high-stakes game of Tetris. This process was excruciatingly slow. A cargo ship often spent just as much time tied up at the dock being loaded and unloaded as it did actually sailing across the ocean. Portside labor routinely accounted for up to 75% of the total cost of sea freight. This extreme friction of time and labor acted as a physical tax on trade. Because moving goods was so slow and expensive, global markets remained isolated and economies stayed stubbornly local. The solution came from an outsider. By the 1950s, Malcolm McLean ran one of the largest trucking fleets in the American South, but he was constantly fighting state highway weight restrictions and heavy fines. The seeds of his frustration were planted years earlier. In 1937, McLean sat in his truck at a Hoboken pier for a full day, forced to idle, while dock workers manually transferred his cargo of cotton bales onto a ship, one single crate at a time. McLean realized the core task was the seamless movement of freight, regardless of the vehicle. Efficiency required looking past the operation of the trucks themselves to the cargo they carried. By shifting focus to the cargo, the primary barrier became clear. The delay wasn't in the transit, but in the chaotic, manual transfer of goods between land and sea. In April 1956, McLean put his theory to the test. He loaded 58 modified truck trailers, separated from their wheels, onto the deck of a converted World War II oil tanker called the Ideal X and sailed it from New Jersey to Houston. The results were immediate. Loading loose cargo the traditional way cost $5.83 per ton. McLean's system loaded that same ton for 16 cents. This was the birth of intermodalism. A single container could now travel seamlessly from a factory onto a flatbed truck, be hoisted by a crane, and placed onto a rail car, all without the cargo inside ever being touched. McLean's system forced the entire transportation ecosystem, every truck chassis, every train flat car, and every port terminal, to physically adapt to the exact dimensions of his container. By cutting the cost of the most expensive part of the journey by over 95%, the container bankrupted the economic friction of distance. The system couldn't sail globally right away. Early shipping companies used proprietary container sizes to lock in customers. A box built for one company was useless if it needed to be loaded onto a competitor's ship or a foreign railcar. It took a decade-long negotiation to establish universal standards. Eventually, the international shipping community agreed on uniform lengths, standardizing the 20-foot and 40-foot containers we see today. This standardization relied on the corner fitting. These 8 pieces of steel, placed on every corner of every container, provided universal points where gantry cranes anywhere on Earth could securely lock onto and lift any box. This physical shift transformed global coastlines. Manhattan's shallow water piers, which had handled maritime traffic for generations, became obsolete. Trade moved to massive deep-water terminals built on heavy concrete pads to support thousands of containers. Agreeing on a simple physical geometry forced a permanent relocation of global commerce hubs. As giant gantry cranes replaced human muscle, tens of thousands of traditional dockworker jobs disappeared. As shipping costs fell from a major barrier to a minor line item, corporations gained the freedom to separate manufacturing from the consumer. They could slice up their supply chains, sourcing components from different countries, specifically to chase the lowest labor wages. This spawned just-in-time manufacturing. Instead of paying to store inventory in local warehouses, companies began treating the reliable container network itself as a rolling warehouse, timing shipments to arrive exactly when needed. To maximize these economies of scale, the ships grew to gargantuan proportions. We went from the Ideal X and its 58 boxes to modern behemoths like the Ever Allied, capable of carrying over 24,000 containers in a single voyage. This chart tracks the degree of containerization across major global ports, showing the speed at which the standardized system took over global trade throughout the late 1960s and 70s. This steep curve represents the world's most powerful economies completely overhauling their trade networks. Trade policies opened borders on paper. The shipping container provided the physical capability to make globalization a reality. A perfectly optimized global supply chain carries a hidden risk. With zero friction and zero buffer, a single localized delay cascades into global gridlock. The ultimate proof of our reliance on these physical choke points happened when the Ever Given became wedged in the Suez Canal, freezing nearly $10 billion in trade every single day. Trace the origin of almost anything you own, the smartphone in your pocket, the sneakers on your feet, and its journey backward points through this exact intermodal network. It all comes back to the unassuming metal box. Our modern abundance feels digital and abstract, but beneath the algorithms and the one-click checkouts, our entire way of life relies on the continuous, physical movement of a standardized steel box.